I very much love school psychology. Like I love being in schools. I love working with students. I love working with teachers. Like I don't want to leave the schools. I just want to do it on my terms and, pick, have a lot more say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I am a school psychologist, and today I have a special guest with me. Her name is Juliana, and we are going to talk all about being an independent school psychologist. So I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So, I am Juliana Ramirez, a bilingual school psychologist in independent practice. I own and operate Beta Services Inc. And we contract with school districts across the state of Ohio, supporting special education teams with bilingual assessments. But I also coach and mentor school psychologists that want to go into independent practice and sort of make that big leap from public to independent school psychology. So I like to call myself like a new school psych coach or mentor. It's
That's
kind of like
so
my new
cool.
role.
It sounds like you have like
Yeah,
so much going on, but
I
that's like really
do.
awesome. What does it mean to be an independent school psychologist?
Okay, so I'm really glad you asked this question because a lot of people get confused. And typically, people think about an independent school psychologist as someone that's in private practice. And while many school psychs that are in private practice consider themselves independent, not everyone that's independent is in private practice. And so, a private practice is like the traditional brick and mortar. Most people have a PhD, but not all, depending on the state where you're at and your scope of practice and license. But most people have a PhD and they sort of see clients in the private sector. You do a lot of like DSM diagnosis or educational diagnoses, and you sort of work in like that private practice, private sector, seeing parents or students. Maybe you do some psychoeducational counseling and sort of that. But I am an independent practice and I don't have a traditional brick and mortar. And I operate as an independent contractor with districts. So I offer sort of support services and I work mostly from home. Most of my cases are virtual. I do have a commute range. But I do like to sort of mention that distinction because if you're a school psychologist in independent practice, you can have more opportunities for you. So you can maybe function more in a consultant type of role or an advocate type of role. You can do contract work for districts. Maybe you can work at an agency. Maybe you can work as a parent advocate. So there's just more opportunities for you. And you can also have a private practice, right? The traditional brick and mortar. So it really just kind of depends on like what you are wanting to do with your skill set. You still provide psychoeducational like reports and assessments and support schools, but really, you continue to be in the schools. You continue to support school districts. You can just support more than one school district at a time, which is what I do. You're not considered an employee of a school district. So you're not bound by that contract that you sign. You can have multiple contracts. You can support charter schools. You can support private schools. You can pick your cases, but that's just one aspect of being an independent school psych. You can also be, again, like I said, a consultant or an advocate. It just depends on kind of how you want your career to look like and sort of what you want your day to day to look like. So it just kind of depends. That's
Sure.
really cool.
No, it sounds like there's so much flexibility and you can really use your strengths to do what you
Uh
want
huh.
or like what you're passionate about. And it reminds me of like any like contract position, but typically people go through like an agency for that because I feel like starting your own
Mm-hmm.
business sounds so like overwhelming. Like that's a big task.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's really intimidating and it's really something that we don't talk about in school psychology ever because we aren't really trained in business and we really only think of the private practice model. And so that's just like one area. And so we kind of think like, oh, I'm going to get my PhD because I may want to do that. And you feel like that's the only way for me to achieve that independence. But that's totally one myth. And it's not the case, especially in different states. Depending on where you're at, you can have a lot of options available. Some states are very regulated.
Mm-hmm.
But it really just depends on like your career goals and like where you're at. And some people are like, I'm done testing. Like, I don't want to be in a school. I still want to use my skill set and do something different. And that is where opening a business really comes in.
Yeah, I could see how this is like this can be so attractive for a lot of school psychologists who are burned out, all those school like Facebook posts where everyone's like complaining
Yes.
about like dynamic and everything else. So I know you
Uh-huh.
have some courses and workshops on how to become an independent school psychologist, but can you give us like a brief, like quick overview of like that process or like maybe
Yeah.
like key steps in achieving that?
It's 4 steps that you need to follow in order to really establish and like launch your school psych business. And so we kind of go through making sure your business is legal and like legitimate, and that's forming it with the state and making sure you're picking the proper business entity. And so there's a lawyer that's a guest speaker there that kind of walks us through all of that. And so she developed a lesson for school psychs, which is really, really cool because, again, there's nothing like that for us. And then there's also the examine module. So there's 4 modules to the course, and examining like your services and your fees and what type of where you're going to offer your services. And then also the advertise module, which looks at like promoting your business and how to network and all these really fun facts about like who's your ideal client and like how do you connect with them and where do you find them and how do you market a school psych business, right? And then the perform module, which has to do with sort of what do you do when you get that first contract or when you get that first client in your business, and like how do you even go about that, and like what are policies and how do I handle money that's coming into my business. And so it really lays everything else. And to this day, more than 15, and I'm proud to say 15 female school psychs across the country have established their business following my model and my teachings and like really taking action with the course. And I'm just like so excited for them.
You must be
So
so
it's really,
proud. That is really
I'm
cool.
like, I'm like so excited for them because they get to really, some of them have kids and want to be at home, and some
Hmm.
of them just kind of want to do something totally different and like didn't feel like the public school was a good fit for them. And so they're doing other things with like communities that they're really supporting, and others want to be able to travel more, to be with their family abroad, and so they get to do that. And so it's been really, really cool to see and empower these female colleagues, school psychs from all over the country, um, making this happen. And I'm just like super excited. I'm like their biggest cheerleader. And the course comes with a lot of coaching and support from me and the community. We have like a private Facebook only community. And there's tons of bonus lessons. So we have one from an accountant to kind of teach us how to navigate and like manage our money. It's called School Psychs Don't Suck at Money because that's like an intimidating one. And we have another one about negotiating. So like, how do you negotiate a contract and things that you should keep in mind when you're offering services to either districts or clients. And we have another one about establishing a traditional brick and mortar. So like, what are some things you need to consider? So it's really helpful for like any school psych that wants to consider their options and really look at like, what are some other things I can do? And one of the things that I really in the beginning kind of hone in is like talking. I go through an exercise called the school psych favorites. So we look at like all the different areas that we have been trained in, like consultation and behavior and assessment, interventions, right? And we sort of look at like, what are you passionate about in your fields? Um, and what's like the thing that you love to learn in grad school? And like, what are some of the classes you really, really enjoyed? And what's some PD now that you maybe are practicing that you continue to seek out because you really like learning about that stuff? And so we take that, which is like this natural interest that you have. And I sort of kind of teach school psychs like, okay, now how can we like capitalize on that and like monetize on that and develop a business and serve your community with the skill sets that you already have? Like, you don't have to go back to get a PhD,
Hmm.
or do anything extra. You just really have to like look at things from a different angle. And that's always like, oh, like I didn't think about that. Like I could really do this. And again, the course is called Increasing Your Independence because some people just want like a little extra income or a little bit more flexibility. And that's cool. Like I'm not here telling people leave the schools like by any means. I love the schools like so much so that I want to be in more schools, right? I didn't want to be like in just one school district. Um, but it definitely, but other people really want to go full time and really explore this. And so it's just really cool to see where everyone's at. And there's a little bit for everyone, really.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you've worked with a lot of people, like coaching, working with a lawyer. Do you know, like, what states allow you to practice independently? Or, like, is there a place that people can go to find this information?
Yeah. So I really like to start with NASP. So if you type in Google scope of practice, school psychologist, and the state you're in, right? So I would say Ohio. And then you click and you write NASP. That NASP has a breakdown of what you can do with your license in each state.
Cool.
Now you want to make sure that that's accurate, but because state laws change all the time. But just today I posted a reel and I had a lot of people ask me like, well, can I do this? There's this one person. She's like, I can't do this in Rhode Island. And I'm like, well, let me check. And I was like, actually, you can be a contractor in Rhode Island. Like you can be an independent school psych. You cannot practice in the private sector. Like, so it's not like she can go in and like give a diagnosis and start a brick and mortar, so to speak, but she can be an independent contractor with districts, with agencies, with LEAs and provide, services. In that way, she can, use her regular Department of Education license and do that. So that's really, really cool. I would start there, figuring out your scope of practice. I will say the Northeast is highly regulated. So New York, Massachusetts, those are very regulated, highly regulated states. And in those states, I mean, if you're really like tired of being in the schools, you can leave the schools. You can still be an independent school psych, just in different kind of terms. So you would have to drop the title of school psychologist, but maybe you become an educational consultant, or maybe you become an advocate, whether that's a parent advocate, or maybe you become a coach. So working, I've seen a lot of like EF coaches or ADHD coach, or supporting parents that are homeschooling students, right? Or supporting parents with the IEP process. Like who better to look at all of these things than us? So each state is, different. But I will say there's 6 states where you can practice independently in the private sector with an additional license. So in addition to your Department of Education license, and still kind of see clients in the private sector. And so those states are California, you have to get an LEP, in Ohio, and we just had our license name change, so it's now the Independent School Psych license. Florida, you get an additional license through the Department of Health. Virginia is another one. I think South Carolina and Colorado.
Okay, I'm like so impressed that you have these states memorized.
There's only 6. There's not that many where you can seek another license.
Do you typically need to do more to get the license, like more hours or something?
You have to take an exam and you have to, so you get an additional license. And yeah, so it just depends on each board. Some states you have to do, like in Ohio, you can sit for that independent license after 3 years of practicing in the schools. Gotcha. And internship does count as year 1. So typically you can do that and then you just get your license. So like in Ohio, our independent license is through the Board of Psychology. So I have 2 licenses that I own and use. So it really just depends. But I've had school psychs from Hawaii to Maine, even like Massachusetts, get the course. And the nice thing about the course is that it's always there and it's always available. And some people really want to binge on it and like do everything. And other people take their time. Other people come back to it because it really just depends on like where you're at in your journey. But yeah, there's like almost every state is represented. Not quite, but almost. At least half of the states in the union are represented in the course. So that's really cool too.
All right, so we talked about the differences between an independent school psych and a school psych in private practice. How does your role
Mm-hmm.
differ from school psychs like this in like the traditional role, like in public schools?
So going back to like some of my favorite things as a school psychologist that I really decided to like capitalize on. I really loved assessment and consultation. Like those were my two really like big passions. I did the school neuropsych diplomate because I just really, really loved assessment so much. And so I decided to sort of offer these bilingual school psych services. And so, when you're in a building, and I was in public schools for 8 years before I became independent, you have to kind of do a little bit of everything, right? And so interventions and the RTI meetings, and you do a lot of pre-referral stuff, but you also do a lot of assessment and intervention pieces and working with, the teachers post evaluation, right? And so in the IEP process. I didn't really like those. I didn't like doing pre-referral. It just really wasn't my favorite. I had a really hard time in RTI meetings and interventions, and it just was really challenging for me. And the same with IEPs and like the after the eval, I really, really enjoyed evaluating students, conceptualizing the cases, putting kind of all the pieces together and report writing. And so I decided to offer these specialized services. So the nice thing about what I do now and how it differs from the traditional role is that one, I get to support more districts and more bilingual students, Latine students, which is kind of my specialty. So working with bilingual students that are Spanish dominant. And I'm not tied to my particular district. I get to support students all over the state. And so a lot of small rural districts that maybe don't have the need for a full-time bilingual school psych, but definitely want to provide their EL students with a fair and just bilingual evaluation can contract with me. And so I am typically an additional evaluator. I don't
Oh.
do the whole evaluation. I'm not like the team chairperson. I really come in and support the building school psychologist in sort of looking at all the pieces from like that bilingual lens perspective and ruling out culture and language. And I really support the building school psychologist and get to like use those consultation skills with the building psych. And then I'm done. And I move on to the next case that like really gets me excited. And so I'm not doing all of the other day-to-day things. It's very different in that way. I have a lot more flexibility. I have a lot more autonomy with my cases. There's just a lot of pros to contracting that I, really value.
Yeah, I do think, past the language aspect of it, because we have interpreters, right? I think like
Mm-hmm.
having that cultural background and understanding and that connection is really valuable. Since you're independent, I'm sure you can also like decide how many contracts you want to take on or like your caseload, right? But that also depends
Mm-hmm.
on like how much income you have to make or a lot of different factors. So what is your like
A lot.
average caseload?
It varies year by year. And I think right now I think I'm I like 35 cases so far that I've done this year. But remember, I'm not doing the full evaluation. So sometimes, like last year I was like, oh, I did 80 cases, but you have to weigh them differently because I'm not like getting paperwork. I'm not sending anything. Like I'm not chasing scheduling and, I'm not dealing with the mental load of an entire case. I'm really just doing cognitive achievement in my little section. So
Mm-hmm.
it's nice. So I probably do between 60 and 80 cases a year, all bilingual, few handful that are traditional cases. But the nice thing about contracting is that I sort of as they come in, I can decide if I do it or not, right? If it's like a new district and I haven't established a contract, then I can decide to take it or not. This year, for the first time, which was really hard to do, I had established a contract in the fall and I did the cases and I really could not do any more of them. Like they had set 25 cases for me. And it was a really great district, really, really solid, good school psych team. But just because of stuff happening with family and there was a lot of unexpected new travel plans in my life, especially this semester, that I knew I was like, I can't do any more of these cases. Like, I just don't have the time to go out. And they were local, so I would go out and assess these kids, and they were very, complicated cases, and I couldn't do it. And so the nice thing about being a contractor is that there is a clause in my contract that says that if I have to sort of end the contract early, I can do that. And so I just send them an email. It's 30 days. And so when December came, right before winter break, I sent them an email and I said, I'm so sorry, but I can't continue. Here's my 30-day. And they were very understanding. And that's kind of the nature of contract work. And so they knew, and I knew that I left them at a good spot. Like, I knew they didn't have any cases in like January, and there were some in February, but they were really heavy in the fall. So I felt like I supported them when they needed me. And I probably did 15 out of the 25 cases. So I did a little bit, more than half of them, but it was really hard. I really struggled with that, but I just kind of kept going back. And I just remember sending that email and the peace of mind. Like, I've had, it's just been so nice.
Yeah.
Because what I have right now is manageable.
It sounds like the contract, like what's in there is also very important. But I'm sure, working with a lawyer and having like mentors like you and your course as a resource, like that's going to be like very, very helpful in the process.
Yeah. So a lot of school psychs go into it and they don't know the importance of having a good contract. And I was one of them. Like, the contract I used for 3 years was trash. Like, I look at it now and I'm just like, oh my God, like, this did not offer absolutely any protection. There was nothing about late fees. Like, if they didn't pay me, there was nothing about any of these. If I wanted to like jump ship and say there was nothing about that, I'm like, what? I had one case where I was like halfway through the evaluation and the kid left the district. And so they were like, okay, we don't need you anymore. And I was like, wait, like,
yeah,
I've already done all of this, right?
All
and so
the
like
hours.
and so the employees, it doesn't matter, but for me, it matters. Like, that time matters. And I didn't have any stipulations for that. And so there's like so much stuff that people aren't aware of, that they don't think about when they go into and they start their school psych business, that I just made sure that I really educate others on, because I'm like, it's so important. And like, you need to protect your license, your personal assets. You need to protect yourself and your business. And contracts really are one of the most important tools that we have.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about that too in the course. Yeah.
What do you think is like the biggest pro and con of being an independent practicing school psychologist?
So one of the big, like, the pros is the flexibility. Being able to really have a say in what cases I want, like, worth every penny, right? If I don't want to do a case, I just don't do it. Or if I don't want to go to that district, I just don't go. And I'm just not available at this time. So I would say and just having like that autonomy, flexibility is really, really valuable.
So is it like,
I think,
do schools reach out to you and they're like, hey, like, can you do this for us? And you're like, yes or no?
Yeah. So usually we have like a consultation call. They'll call me and say, hey, I have this case. This is kind of what that looks like. Can you, assist us? I had a case, like, this is a great example. Right before winter break, they called me the first week in December and said, we have this case. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I can support you. we need a cognitive, we need an achievement, we need some social emotional reading skills in Spanish. Okay, great. So I send them a contract. This is my contract, right? That I've had, and that I approve. And it took them like a few days to get back to me. And then they responded to the contract, but they had so many things that they wanted me to change because they have their lawyers look over their contract. And so they were like, we want you to change this, change that, blah, 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 which it's fine. I could change a lot of that wording to make it better for them. I was okay with that. But one of the big things that they had there were two issues, and it was kind of like red flags for me. One was that they wanted me to like up my liability insurance. And I just did that in August, and that would have cost me more money. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that right now. Like, they're the only district that wants me to like increase my liability insurance. So that's not worth it. But the other thing was, by the time this was all sorted, it was like December 10th, and I was going on vacation December 14th. And they needed the case, like they needed the student tested, report written, and everything written up. And they wanted me to be at the meeting on January 5th. Like this quick turnaround.
With like a 2-week break, right?
With a 2-week break, but I really only had 4 days to do this. And that was a perfect example of, had I been an employee and like, I wouldn't have had a choice, right? You would have been the school psych. I was like, oh my God, I just need to test this kid and I don't have a choice and I need to get everything done. But I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I would love the opportunity to work with you guys in the future, but I'm not agreeing to your terms, right? Your counter terms, right? Because they did kind of counter my contract. And also I can't get it done. So good luck.
That sounds amazing. Like, can you imagine like working in the schools and be like, actually, like,
no,
that one's not for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pass on this one. We can't. So I would say that's like that's like the biggest pro to contract. The other sort of the biggest con, and I feel like I'm in I don't see it as a con, that much of a con anymore, but when you're beginning contract work, you definitely like struggle with this, is with the influx of income. So some months are really good and you're really busy and you're making a really good amount of money. But this month, for example, was I don't think I made that much. Like it wasn't a bad month, but it wasn't like a great month, right? And summer is really dry. So I don't get any work. Like I don't have an income June, July, and August. And that can be really unnerving for a lot of people. So you really have to be financially like savvy, which led me to sort of create some of these programs, right? And I was like, I'm just going to do the course and like the online content creation because I knew I needed an additional stream of income for the summer months. And so now that I've developed this, I feel like I'm approaching this summer in a much better position as a business owner. And that's sort of like the things that you have to think about, because when you're school psych, like you're still getting your paycheck. You don't really think about that. But when you make the transition to business owner, those are things that you have to think about. So I would say that's unnerving. And that's definitely a con, is that some months you make a lot of money, or you're really busy, or you're really comfortable with the income. And then other months it's like a little dry. You're not like, I have an SLP that contracts with me, and I texted her today. I'm like, did you send me like an invoice for your hours? She's like, I didn't do anything in January. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like she didn't evaluate any kids in January. So that's a little, not the best thing in the world.
Well, that comes with having a business, right?
Yeah, I mean, unpredictability.
Like businesswoman or like owning a business, like that sounds so badass.
Thank you. Anyone can do it. It's a lot of hard work. I will not like sugarcoat it. You definitely really need to want it, but it's just so worth it. Like it's just different when it's your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like you've done, like people can get creative to make that extra income, especially during like summer months. I was thinking, you said coaching, Like maybe you can do groups with students. Like they don't have school
Yeah.
either. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can totally see how that's like so stressful thinking about like
I know.
just the I don't want to say like instability, but just not knowing.
Yeah, it's uncertainty and there's a lot of influx. And so you do kind of have to account for that and you have to be very financially responsible. Um, so that like that's the other thing. I will say too, like having your business comes, like comes with a lot of other things. So I really like doing the independent school psych thing and I'm really like into content creation and sort of these digital offers and digital products and the course. And now this month I launched 2 workshops and just I'm really into that. But that also comes with like a whole dose of marketing and like social media management, like accounting. Like I feel like my Achilles heel is like the accounting side of business. Like that's definitely not my forte, but I'm not at a
Mm,
point where I can really kind of outsource that.
right.
Like it's really costly for me right now. So there's definitely like that whole aspect of business that still intimidates. But I will say when you're starting out, you don't have to worry about that stuff
Mm,
that much. Like you can definitely like worry about what you really love to do. And there is a right way and a wrong way to do business. And I really preach like this is the best. This is what you should do. You should have contracts so you're not stressing about your payments, right? Like you should know how to approach districts and pitch to districts and like this is how you do that because a lot of people will be like, well, I sent so many emails and nobody contacted me. And I'm like, well, what time of year did you do that? Or like, there's a lot of strategy behind business.
mm.
And because we are not trained in business, then I think that our school psych businesses struggle or we kind of struggle a lot in the beginning because it's like, I don't know what to do here.
Right. Yeah, we all need a coach, especially when we're first starting off. I can't imagine like what you went through, like just feeling like you're doing it all by yourself and like, looking for resources like on Google, but like there's no one doing it other than like agencies, right? Like
Yeah. Or like totally in the private sector.
right.
So I could have gone to like PhD clinical psychs that are doing business, but I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do a brick and mortar. Like, I don't want to, even though I'm licensed and I could very well do that.
Hmm.
I did 2 cases where I like did the diagnosis and I was like, this is like so stressful. Like, this is totally not me. Like, I very much love school psychology. Like, I love being in schools. I love working with students. I love working with teachers. Like, I don't want to leave the schools. I just want to do it on my terms and pick have a lot more say, but that like those were the role models, and so it was really, I'm like, that's not the type of business that I want to have.
Hmm.
I also did this all in the throes of postpartum life, which I don't recommend that. Like I had my baby and registered my business in the same month. Both my daughter and my business were born March of 2018.
Wow.
And it was just kind of like it was a lot. And, but the beauty in that is that I really took my time at that point. Honestly, what helped is that I had very low expectations. And so I was like, I'll pitch districts. If they call me, great. If not, I'll go back to changing diapers. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not like, I'll take her to story time today. It was very super low expectations. And I was really able to like take my time with like, working certain relationships and districts and just kind of feeling like what I wanted to do. And a lot of times they'd call me and be like, yeah, sorry, I can't drive out there. I have like a newborn. So I just feel like it was really good timing. You have to take advantage of the timing too. Like
Yeah.
you'll know, like it was really good timing because I just had like really low expectations. And with the pandemic helped my business so much because all of the districts were open to virtual at that time.
Virtual
And so it
testing.
really, virtual
Oh my
assessments and virtual
gosh.
school psych services because
Everyone was
it was
virtual.
everyone was virtual. So at that time, like I remember February of 2020, I was driving 2 hours north in Ohio to test kids. And then I'd go drive for 2 hours, test the student, and drive back for 2 hours. And I was like, I did it that one time to see what it would be like, but I was also like, I'm like, this isn't sustainable. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to grow my business this way. And at the time, I was like, okay, I have a 1.5 year old. Like, I appreciate the daily break. Like, it was a one day I got to do my own thing, but I'm like, I can't scale my business this way. So once that fall came, districts started calling me and I was like, I'm sorry, we're only doing virtual. And they were like, okay, fine, whatever, just assess these kids. And I was like, oh my God, like I can now serve the entire state of Ohio virtually. Like, this is great. Crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's life, right? Like you never know like when something's gonna happen, like when opportunities roll around, and it's
Yeah,
really timing and where you are in
I know.
life.
So crazy. Yeah. So I had one particular district, they were calling me so much that year. And you just kind of, how you get your like groups and I'm like, I haven't seen you. And they're like, it's not reeval time. Like, we'll see you again next year. Like they had a group of like EL students. And so I assessed them. And I was like, they were like, can you come? Can you come? And then I was like, listen, let's pilot these virtual evals. Like, are you guys open to it? And they were like, oh my God, yes. And it worked. And they were like, we love it. Like, let's keep doing it. And I
Wow.
was like, okay, great. And they were like, it's so, efficient. And so after I did that, I was like, all right, like, let's start promoting this to the entire state. And it just like opened so many doors for me.
Yeah, my districts were like, no, like that is not standardized. We're not doing that. Like, just no testing.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I know like all states are like operating differently. Like, that
Mhm.
was a crazy time. I can't believe like we lived through that.
I know. It feels like a blur now.
Yeah, and I have like just talking about like my audience for YouTube, most people are a little bit younger.
Mhm.
When you say like postpartum, like the first month you have a baby, it's like it's such a blur. Like the whole month, like you don't know like what's going on, like what day it is, like you're just trying to like get a
Yeah,
shower in, like grab a bite to eat. Like it's just
I know.
insane.
It's insane. So insane. My sister just had a baby and I went to see her and I was like, hey, how's it going? And she's just like, I'm like, you're in the zombie phase. It'll get better
Yeah.
in a few weeks. And she's like, like she's just like going through the motions and
Hmm.
really just keeping this baby alive
Right.
is like what
That's
you're
your goal.
doing.
Yeah.
Let's just keep this baby fed and happy.
Yeah, and, like, you're in, like, full recovery mode, like, your body
Yeah.
went through something
Yeah.
traumatic, so, I mean,
So
I feel
crazy.
like a lot of people just don't know until, like, you experience it or, like, you're going through that phase of life.
Yeah. Until you live it, like you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, so we met online on Instagram, and then we got to
Uh,
meet each other in person at NASP, which I thought was
I know.
amazing. So where can
So
people
fun.
find you online?
So I am most active on Instagram. So my handle is the bilingual school psych. So you should definitely check me out there. I post daily and I talk a lot about these topics, bilingual school psychology and being independent. Um, I'm a little bit active on LinkedIn, but not too much. And then my website is really where all the services live. And where you can learn more about me and what I do. And if you're in Ohio and need support with bilingual evals, you can contact me. And if you're interested in the course, you could definitely do that. And it's www.betaservicesinc, PERA, betaservicesinc.com. And yeah, there's freebies too. So you can check out, I have a student interview freebie and I have the guidebook. Also, if you're interested in, like, really interested in learning more about being independent. So that it's like a step-by-step process, step-by-step list, action items that you can do to really like organize and really get you thinking about that. And a lot of my, I feel like, really hearty content lives in my email newsletter. So I send out a newsletter every Monday, just kind of talking about different topics, or if I'm promoting something, email subscribers get it first. And so right now, this month was launch month. January was launch month. And so workshop month. And so I did 2 workshops that are available for purchase. And then finally, my course, which is increasing your independence. That's like my flagship course. It's really the only course for school psychs that really want to talk business. There's courses for SLPs, there's stuff for OTs, there's stuff for social workers and clinical psychologists, private practitioners, but there was nothing for school psychologists. And so this course really is like what you need if you want to go down that route.
I feel like you should like present at NASP.
I know. I always like, I don't know, NASP really intimidates me. So I'm like, I'll just stay in my little corner. But
No, you're an OG,
maybe
like you're a trailblazer.
we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I maybe next year. I keep thinking about it, but so far, it's just hard to get to NASP and like,
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see. But I've thought about maybe starting with like a booth at NASP promoting the
Sure,
course. Like I
yeah.
feel like that would be fun. So we'll see. But I'm excited for the future because it's looking good, and I'm just excited about the content and creating things, and that's like lets me be creative, right? And so I don't know. You should check out if anyone's interested, check out the website.
Yeah, I will have everything linked below, and then I'm probably going to put some stuff on the screen too. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. I think you're such a valuable resource, and it's been so fun just chatting again. So thank you
Yay!
so
I know.
much.
No, thank you. I'm super, super excited. So thanks for having me. I've never been on YouTube. So this is like my first YouTube interview. So I'm like so pumped to see it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.